Oh, shalom, my friends, and shalom, my enemies too, and my enemies as well. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And what fun we're going to have with CHIP DEFFAA, who is, I'm hoping, still getting his camera going up here because we don't have video. I'm hoping we have audio. Chip, can you hear us? Can we hear you?
I can hear you.
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, we see you. Mit Mazel McGlick. And can you tilt your camera a little more because I see a lot of ceiling. Oh, I love your shirt. Wow. Wow, it's like Woodstock threw up. I love
It's
it.
I saved this for you. This is the premiere of the shirt.
It's beautiful, actually. So getting to a place where your Wi-Fi is kind of decent, where we're a little herky-jerky, but as long as we hear you, I guess that. Oh, and better lighting too. Now we're talking. Now we've got it going on. Here you go. Looking good.
Okay,
Chip
we're getting there.
Defa. Looking. Oh, you're
We're getting
semi.
there.
Okay. Once you settle in, I think the camera will be a little more. Am I breaking up, or are
No,
you?
it's good. I was just moving the thing to try to get the lighting better and the positioning better.
Yeah. We lost the lighting there. But now we're good. Now we're good. Now we're good. I think
Good.
we're okay.
Okay.
Good to see you, Chip DeFa. Let me tell you again, the people at home, who Chip DeFa is. Singer, songwriter, theatrical playwright, and producer of music CDs dedicated to the Great American Songbook and Cabaret. He is a former jazz, theater, and cabaret, of course, critic for the New York Post. He's won an ASCAP award, and if you've ever had an ASCAP, you know how painful that can be. He's won awards from New Jersey Press, as well as I think you are still the editor at large of
That's
theaterscene.net
right. You got it.
website, and he is really one of the foremost experts, probably living, on the music and life of George M. Cohan. So
I am
won't you
probably
please?
living. Yes. Yes.
Well, and probably Irving Berlin too, and one or two more of composers of that era. And are you a Sigmund Romberg man, or is that too early, or not, or
I like him, but I'm not an expert on him like
not
Cohen
an
or Berlin.
aficionado like on those? So Chip Defa, welcome, shalom to you, welcome to the
Shalom to
neighborhood,
you.
shalom. So tell me. You're doing so many things, and you have done so many CDs. You have a new one now. By the way, these CDs I mentioned, it's not like he sings and dances on all 40 CDs. You have other people,
Of
cabaret
course.
notables, singing the
Yeah.
songs of cabaret. So, what is your latest CD that you have produced?
Okay. I'm not singing on this, but this is a CD of Al Jolson, Eddie Cantor, and Jimmy Durante, called Al Jolson, Jimmy Durante, and Eddie Cantor give their regards to Broadway. And it's got some previously unreleased material, including tributes by all three of them to George M. Cohan. And I listened to over 100 Eddie Cantor radio shows before I found this wonderful tribute he did to George M. Cohan just shortly before Cohan died. And so here's Cantor remembering that he said the first song he ever remembered singing was a Cohan song and doing this tribute to him. And that was a find. And then I found this Jimmy Durante tribute to Cohan, and Jimmy Durante had worked and Cohan had done a film together. And so it's nice to find rare stuff and put that out. At the same time, as you said, the other CDs I'll do are like with living artists. I'm very proud. Like here's just one of them: rare and unrecorded Irving Berlin songs, and some aren't rare. We also have some famous ones because fans always say we want to hear something we know and some things that have never been recorded. And I'm very proud. Like Tony Award winner Betty Buckley's on this album,
Whoa.
and Anita Gillette, who was in Irving Berlin's last Broadway musical, came in and recorded for me, and Steve Ross, another Berlin expert. Lots of good people as well as young people. And I laugh because I don't
Right.
do anything out of a monetary motivation. It's just I'm trying to put out the songs I like and the performers I like. And one of the young performers, um, Jack Corbin, he's just 22 and he's recorded with me since he was 14. He called me up just so excited because I had given him this very obscure Irving Berlin song to record called When the Curtain Falls. Never recorded in Berlin's lifetime, a song like from 1917. And he called me up and he says, Chip, do you know? Because I never checked the statistics. He says, "Do you know that song now has 6,000 hits on Spotify? 6,000 people have somehow found this totally obscure Irving Berlin song by a young guy that's hardly famous. He's a wonderful singer, but is not somebody that people like, know a name like Betty Buckley." And so he couldn't be happier that he's got 6,000 people heard that recording. And I'm like, okay, it's good, but I would have been happy even if it was 5 people, because it's a song that's never been recorded. We wanted to record it. I wanted to find a good singer for it, famous or not famous. But he's happy that.
Well, what was that line? I don't know if it was from a Jonathan Larson thing or an Ed Kleban thing of like, I'd rather be 5 people's favorite thing than 1,000 people's second favorite thing. Does that line ring a bell?
I love that, and either of those people I love. So whether it was Jonathan Larson or Kleban,
But this does also beg the question. There's this Corbin guy that I'm also friends with him on Facebook, and it seems like they're like one of these special people who from 4 years old knew he wanted to love cabaret and music that nobody else he knows is listening to. But questioning it, he's saying, 6,000 likes on Spotify, and yet you are still putting out physical hard copy CDs.
Right.
What makes you in 2025 have a physical product still, as opposed to like a neuro token or whatever the hell they call these things?
I know some of my recording artists don't have a means to play a CD, and they'll just listen to it on Spotify or Apple Music or Deezer or Tidal or one of these digital things. I'm not a digital guy. I've never, I shouldn't say this because my albums are on all these platforms. I've never downloaded a digital album. I buy either a physical CD, or I have lots of LPs. I have 78s. But I like, when I make the CDs, I'll typically write like a 24-page liner note booklet. So there's some information on every song, every singer, the musicians. That's part of the joy of it. And also a lot of the people who get these things are older people, and they like a physical CD. So that, well, like we just did an album of the soundtrack album of the movie of George M. Cohan at Night, and even just to have it opens up to have liner notes copy and stuff like that.
Hold it up so we can see. Hold it on the.
I mean, this one's not so long, but it's still 8 panels of liner notes and stuff. There are enough people that it's not just enough they don't want to just hear this CD. They want to actually, look at there's a photograph of John Peterson, there's a photograph of Cohan, and they want to know exactly who the musicians are. All this stuff you don't get if the history of it that you only get if you buy a physical product. And they can do a digital download, but if they want to hear it on Spotify or Apple Music, that's fine. But a lot of people like to know.
I miss albums. I miss 8-track tapes. So there's something wrong with me on that score. But let me ask you this though: what is like the print run, if you will, of a CD? Do you do 1,000? Do you do 5,000? Or is it per order like books now, where you make if you have 10 people to buy a book, you make 12 copies?
I used to always print 1,000, and nowadays I might print 300, and if we get orders for more, you do more. But like right now, there's one in the works, and it'll be an album of me singing, and we'll print 300 CDs, and other people get digitally. But I'm happy because I get to sing with all these people I love. So there'll be a duet with me and John Peterson, who stars in all my George M. Cohan shows and stuff. There's Jerry Vivino on sax, and he's played with all the greats in the world, from Tony Bennett, Bruce Springsteen, all that. And he'll sing a number with me that's about a blues, but have him playing when I'm singing some blues things. I'll sing with Ingrid Lucia from the Flying Neutrinos. She'll sing a song about New Orleans, where she's from, and I'll sing with different people that have been, parts of my life. And Keith Anderson, who's sung on many of my albums for 20 years and stuff. Lots of good people.
Let me ask you also about the way of putting a CD. Even the Cantor Jolson. Who was it? It was Eddie Cantor Jolson and who?
Jimmy Durante.
Jimmy Durante. So I can't imagine that that is all public domain yet, because public domain starts in the mid 20s. What do you have to go through to get the rights to use those stars' material, not to mention the songwriter material, which may or may not be public domain at this point? What do you have to go through for rights?
Well, it's usually pretty straightforward. There's agencies like Easy Song Licensing, and you can tell them I want to record these songs that have been previously recorded by whoever, Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra. They can, now everything's computerized. They can look at those rights and clear them within a couple of days. When I was younger, it was a big, hard process, and you had to allow a lot of time to search for the rights. When I first began doing something like this, I remember writing Jimmy Durante's widow in person. And I was thrilled just to have a note from her. Do you know what I mean? And then she says, well, really, you should talk to the publishing companies. And I don't get involved with the business, but here, a handwritten note like saying, here's who publishes the song or something like that. But an amazing amount of material is public domain. Like I did this album of Al Jolson. I don't remember the title of this one, whether it was From Broadway to Hollywood or something like that. And people are saying, and there's soundtrack recordings from maybe The Singing Fool, which was 1928, and The Jazz Singer 27, and The Plantation Act 1926. And that material, those film soundtracks are now public domain. And I can get stuff. There's stuff that I have on those albums that was released in those films in those days that are somehow missing from the copies available for home viewing. Like we've got a botched copy is the one that's in circulation, and so numbers have been cut, or it was cut out or chopped, or it's missing numbers. But some of that stuff, I've got original sources. I've got a friend of mine, he's got the original Vitaphone discs to some of this material, which is very, very rare, so that I can hear the and then I have to get a guy to do the audio restoration, stuff like that. But we can throw in, like, there's some little bit, it's a small bit of dialogue. It's going to be on, is it on the one that's out now, or it's going to be on the next one? It's going to be on the next one. I mean, it's already been mastered, but it's not released yet. And in it, it's just a little dialogue. And Jolson is calling his wife up and saying, I'm coming home for dinner. Now, how about you make me let's start with a little herring. I want some potato pancakes. I want some ham and eggs. No ham. And it's very clear. If you understand it, what he's saying, it'll go right by a lot of listeners. But if you were a Jewish listener, you understand the point he's making.
The implication is, yeah.
Yes, and I would bet you anything that he either ad-libbed that bit, that it wasn't in a script or something like that. It sounds very much like I mean, it's just done so cutely. I want a little this, and make me a little herring, a little potato pancake, and a little ham. No ham, just the eggs, and it's cute, and that's never been on an album, and it leads. It's not a song, but it's part of his personality, and it's a little part of history. So I was thrilled to say, okay, that's public domain. I'm going to get that into the
sure, why not? A little shtickle to include.
Yeah. And it's who he is. It's part of who he is, and sometimes you have material that you might want to include, but you don't, because people said things that were insensitive towards ethnicities or races, and you don't want to. And somebody said, why don't you, I have a very rare recording of this, because maybe the lyrics today would be racist. And I said, there's no point in needlessly hurting people when I've got other stuff that's just as rare, and it wasn't done in a spirit of meanness, but in today's world, you know, you wouldn't use that language. Irving Berlin lived long enough that he rewrote some of his early songs because he used some lines that he realized were later were stereotypical or demeaning, and they weren't. He done in
I'm a
serious
Native
ways.
American too, like you. Or
Yeah,
I don't know if that's one
yeah,
of the ones he would have rewritten. That's
yeah,
just one they cut out after he died. But yeah,
yeah, yeah. And in fact, he even it's very rare to have somebody this sensitive. But in 1946, because he had reissued a song where they used it on a recording, and it was a song he had written, let's say, back in the World War I era, and there were some racially insensitive words. Maybe it said darkies or something that was done, said in those days, and he apologized in print. He took a full page ad in Variety and says, and it was a fascinating ad because he said, um, I hear it now, and that's not the spirit in which I wrote it. And he changed it to say from darkies to folks or something like that. That was not that. He says, but you have to understand, I grew up in an area where an era where um, a Jewish character in vaudeville was stereotyped. He says, an Irishman was this way, a German was that way, and we didn't think of those things as being hurting anybody's feelings. It was just part of what we did. He says, and I was part of that culture, and I thought it was a very insightful way not to say I was right, but try to explain to people this was not
the
done out of
context. It
malice.
was
It was
different
right.
times.
Right, but
Now,
I want to change it now because I
yeah.
don't want to hurt. And I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah.
And the fact that he did this in the 1940s and not like the
Yes.
1980s or the cancel culture of the past
No, no,
10
no.
years or something. But
It
yeah.
was extraordinary. It was unique. I never saw anybody else do that as a public thing, saying, if I offended anybody, I'm sorry. And I thought that's amazing.
Oh,
And
I once wrote a song called My Sweet Little Schwarze. And I was
right,
doing it, this was just 5 years ago. Oh, the
right,
apologies I had to make. Let me tell you, I
yeah,
don't even do that song anymore.
right,
Yeah, I changed it to Eskimo, and I can get away with it now.
yeah,
Which is a little bit because you don't really see Eskimos eating watermelons a lot. But anyway, let's
yeah.
have some more conversation here with Chip
Good.
DeFaa. So you have mentioned many times that the Cohan thing for you
Yes.
began as a child seeing a Cagney
1970.
film.
Yes.
Tell us, what was it, that suddenly, like the curtains opened, you saw Technicolor, well, it wasn't Technicolor, but you saw this movie and what?
Okay. I grew up in the New York area, and Million Dollar Movie used to show a movie 7 days a week. So they show this movie, Yankee Doodle Dandy, the story of George M. Cohan, and I watch it the first time, and I'm mesmerized. I'm in third grade, and I watched it every day for a week. And I was so gripped the first time in my life. I skipped swim practice, which you were not allowed to do. I was on a swim team because it was more important to see this movie, and it was more. And I want to know more about him. And I asked Dad, "Where do I hear more music like that?" And he says, "Well, maybe in Broadway shows. That's the kind of music you like." Now that got me excited about Broadway generally, and then I started looking up Cohan in the little encyclopedias we had at home. And I took it upon myself. I got yellow line paper from school. We'd never had a writing assignment in school. The teacher, third grade teacher, would never have assign us a report or anything like that. And I wrote her a 10-page report on George M. Cohan and handed it in. And she's called my parents and says, "This is extraordinary." He says, "We don't have another student that could write 10 pages, much less somehow he did research." I combined what I heard from the movie, which I assumed it was all true. A lot of it's made up in a movie, but took that from what was in the encyclopedia so I could name other plays he did and musicals and songs he wrote. And then I started asking, like my brother was 3 years older than me. So if I'm third grade, he's sixth grade. To me, he knows everything in the world. Like, tell me more about George M. Cohan, who he'd never heard of. And my brother says he'll do some research for me. So my brother starts on this quest. My brother, God love him, to this day, he's the same. He will do anything for you, anything. I mean, if I opened a play in New York and he was in Korea on business, he would fly back jet lagged to be in the audience that night. So my brother starts searching around. Can he find me Cohan sheet music or an old recording in a secondhand shop or a book or something like that? Eventually, he gets from a library Cohan's autobiography, which is very rare and hard to find. Now I own a copy. I might own 2 copies. But then,
But wait,
and
can I
then,
ask, does Cohan tell the truth in his autobiography, or is it kind of like Richard Rogers, where it's not all necessarily
it's a lot of it's just breezy anecdotes, but his personality comes through very clearly. And even if the stories have been shaped to get a laugh or get a punchline, the personality comes through so clearly. He says, and whether it's literally true or not, he says, my father tried to have someone give me music lessons, and I took only 3 lessons. That's all I needed. And the music teacher wrote my father, there is no need to teach this boy anything. It is impossible to teach him anything because he already knows it all, which was, of course, a little put down of George, but George is showing us who his personality was. And there's truth in that story, whether it was literally that teacher or that. And I laugh because later when he said when he watched Yankee Doodle Dandy, he thought Cagney captured his personality so well. He said, he got my attitude. My God, how did he get my attitude so well? I thought all you had to do was read this autobiography, and it's all there. It's there whether he's up or he's down. It's all there. But
So you turn this 10-page paper to
wait.
Oh, so please, yeah, there's more, yeah.
This is, I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself, but
Sure.
the teacher I turned it into, her name was Miss Doremus, my 3rd grade teacher at Richard E. Byrd School in Glen Rock, New Jersey. Years later, when I do George M. Cohan at Night in New York, and I hire Vince Giordano, the best bassist I can find to be in the bass in this show. And I say, Vince, I want you here, and it's so much there. And I tell him this story about how I had this 3rd grade teacher, Mr. Remus, and I wrote the paper, which I still have. My parents got it back from her and saved it. He said, Chip, Mr. Remus was my aunt who taught in Glen Rock. Your 3rd grade teacher was my aunt. I said, what are the odds of that? That's like so. But more now, we go to more things. I'm this little kid, and I'm being mentored, and I love to perform. And I begged my parents, let me perform. So I went to American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I was in plays, and I was doing shows, and I was in shows with David Hartman and William Devane and all these good people when I was a kid. But the person who mentored me the most, and he was like 1,000,000 years old, was this ex-vaudevillian named Todd Fisher. And he was 1,000,000 years old, and he had, when vaudeville died, he had to get a real job, and he would still perform when he could, and he would still mount little shows. So he never totally gave it up, but he would always say to me, he would show me a program or a photo, and he'd say, this is me playing the Palace Theater in 1913. My life has been downhill ever since then. And he'd show me pictures of him as young, with young Gypsy Rose Lee and Baby June and Mama Rose. He worked with them before they were anybody, And I had no idea who these people were he was talking about. I had to learn. Can you still see me?
I
okay.
hear you fine. You're
Todd,
strobing a little, yeah. Uh-oh.
Okay, so
yeah.
So Todd Fisher is like this amazing mentor because he knew all these people. He saw all these people. He saw Cohan and all that, and he would say to me, and he stopped when he couldn't work in vaudeville for a time because vaudeville dies like around 1930. He was still working in the tail ends of it, but he was making his living as a door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman, and here he is, like in his 80s, still the door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman, lugging around vacuum cleaners in bags, knocking people, can I sell you a vacuum cleaner? But on his spare time, he was putting on shows for, like, if a school wanted to do a show, he could produce it. If an American Legion wanted to do a show, so he'd have me like be in a show like for the American Legion. And I would say to him, and he'd say, I'm going to give you this song to sing. And he had all the original sheet music. So he's teaching me Irving Berlin songs from like 1919. You'd be surprised. I didn't even understand the songs. And I'd say, but I'm not a singer. I'm not a singer. And he says, you think Cohan was a singer? He sang his songs. You're going to do the same thing. He says, he got over on his personality, and you got it in you, Chipper. He says, they would have loved you in vaudeville. They would have loved you in minstrel shows. You've got personality. That's what matters, not a singing voice. And so he would teach me to sing these songs, and I'd be like, you'd be surprised. So long as you could hit the notes, he didn't have to have an operatic voice. And so I'd come out, and he'd teach me ridiculous little things, not ridiculous little things like they're not ridiculous, but it's things no 10-year-old was learning. Like he would say to me, okay, you're going to make your entrance onto the stage, and you're not going to walk onto the stage. You're going to strut onto the stage. Mm-hmm. And he'd practice teaching me a strut, listening to this music. He says, you got that tempo in your mind? That's a perfect march tempo, 120 beats per minute. You're strutting to it. Your left foot comes down on the beat. This, that, and that. And I say, he says, I said, oh, I've got it. So I'm going to walk into that music. He says, no, you're going to walk in without music, but the music will be in your head. 120 beats per minute on that thing. You're going to hear that tune. 60 years later, I walk into a room. If I want to make an entrance, that music is playing in my head. The left foot is coming down the beat.
The things we learn. I get it. It's absolutely, I get it. Yes.
He used to sit with me, and we would read Variety once a week, because he wanted us to look at the box office grosses, what show's doing well, what's not doing well. I was learning from him. I knew as a 10 years old that in 1927, the jazz singer grossed $4 million, and the singing fool the next year grossed $6 million. I still have those figures retained. And he would say, Cohan sang his numbers. Rex Harrison sang his numbers.
Yes.
My Fair Lady was still running on Broadway. Rex had left the cast, but it was still running. Michael Allenson was playing the role. He says, go see it. Listen to the way he sings a number. That's part of what you do. So I laughed. I'm trying to talk to, I got a wonderful young singer right now who's telling me, like, I'm not good enough to record yet. Like, if I have 10 more years of that, because he knows he doesn't sing like these Broadway greats I have on. And I'm trying to tell him, like this guy mentored me, you're young, you're going to be fine for your age. I'll give you numbers you can sing. And if you can't sing, if I say to you, Harrigan, Harrigan, that's me. I said, if you can't say Harrigan, that's me. If you can't sing it, speak it. Speak it to the notes. Harrigan, that's me. You can do that. And I know I'm going to get him to do it eventually. And he'll because he's got so much personality. It's like when I'm auditioning people for a show, I'm not looking for it's not so much how do they read the lines, how do they sing. I'm looking for things like the light in their eyes. Are they going to light up a stage before they've read a line or that? I'm talking with them, and I'm making a decision sometimes right then and there. And I've had people come into audition, they don't know it, but they charm me so much just talking to them that I say, okay, he's not right for any part in that script that I've written. I'm going to write a part for him because I want that personality on the stage. And I've written parts for that girl or that guy.
Wow. Have you ever had a part for a really angry Jew? Just bring it right here. I can rock that song. Tradition, goddamn it. Tradition, damn it. So, yeah, let me ask you, was My Fair Lady the first Broadway show you ever saw, or you were already going to Broadway, but you paid attention to that one because of Rex Harrison?
That was the first one. I think I was 10 years old. My sister was 7. Let me see. Was I 10 or was I 9? Okay, so I'm 9 or 10 years old. 10. And we saw it, and every bit of it fascinated me. I was fascinated by, there was a turntable on that stage in the original production that the scenery would revolve around. And to me, when I saw the next revival later and it didn't revolve around, I was like, how could they? That fascinated me so much as a kid. I was fascinated just in the overture, you could hear the harp, you could hear the strings, and I could pick out the different instruments, and I could see the instruments. And it was fascinating to see somebody playing a harp. We're hearing it, we're watching the music being created, and we're hearing it. We're seeing that. I was also fascinated because at one point, Professor Henry Higgins has to say, damn, damn, damn. And that would not have been allowed in my household. So to hear that said on stage was shocking. And we used to go, in those days, we used to go to our local movie theaters. They had continuous showings. And so we would often go like on a Saturday, and there'd be two movies and there'd be the cartoons, and we would stay and watch the movie again. So you for the price of one admission, you could watch the movie again. And we didn't have a lot of extra money, but it was fun. You could stay in the movie till you were sick of it. So I remember we finished My Fair Lady, and my little sister was probably 7. She says, "That's good. Let's stay for the next show." My parents like, it doesn't work like that. You have to go home now. And they had scrimped and saved. They did that went mostly for me because I was supposed to hear what talk singing sounded like on a New York stage. But I was just fascinated with the whole.
So can I ask you, we're talking with Chip DeFaa here. When you went
Yeah,
to Princeton, because you're Ivy
yeah,
educated, did you
yeah.
go for a theater thing, or were your parents like, no, business, or no, science, something? What did you do?
Listen. This is so stupid. When the first time I stepped foot on Princeton, I was down there as a kid. I was on a swim team too, and we were there for some big swim meet. And the beauty of the place just amazed me, and and walking around, and that it was associated. I was there, and somebody said to me, and Albert Einstein, walk these grounds, and he was like the smartest man in the world. And so in my head, this was the place to go. And in my head, I decided then, not knowing anything else, this is where I wanted to go. And it was so beautiful, and it was so I would have gone there if if it was a degree in being a dog catcher. And I was so set on it. And then learning later, um, F. Scott Fitzgerald went to Princeton, and he still is my favorite serious writer, novelist, and short story writer. And Richard Halliburton, a great author, adventurer, explorer, and he had and I grew up on his books, of the Book of Wonders and the Royal Road to Romance. And he went to Princeton, and so in my head, Princeton was where I wanted to go, and I had no idea how hard it was or anything like that. And my parents were like, if you work hard, you can do whatever you want in life. That sort of mythical belief. It's good American belief, but I believed it as a kid. So I was getting good grades from an early age. I was like, that's where I'm going to go. And Dave, it's
Sal,
good
but
I
yeah,
got accepted. Sorry, Saul. It's
yes.
good I got accepted because Rabbi. It's good I got accepted because that's the only place I completed an application to. So
Oh man, wow,
if I didn't
well
get
done.
in, I'd be in a lot of trouble. I'd be out there.
You'd be a trauma Nick. You'd be just circling the streets, eating out of garbage cans
and
for a
and
year.
I
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
I wrote for a humor magazine there. I wrote cartoons, and I'm a trustee of that humor magazine today. All this stuff.
What
In
was your
fact,
major though? What was your official? What did you
this is
study?
it makes it's going to make no sense because I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I majored in religion bridged with psychology, and also got enough English courses and writing courses, so I got certified to teach English. So I have
Oh,
a teaching degree. That was going to be my fallback, but I had this wonderful writing professor, Irving Dilliard, and God, I lucked out in so many ways, and he had been the editorial page editor of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and there was a great deal of pressure at Princeton, saying you should go to grad school after Princeton, so that everybody else was told. So that the logic, most professors would have said the next thing is to get your master's in English and a PhD in English. If you want to be a writer, you want to get advanced degrees in English, and I didn't want to spend more time in a classroom. And this wonderful professor says, what do you want to go to college for? He says you know, you're already a very good writer. Good writers are in short supply. Go out and write. It doesn't matter if it's a small paper, a big paper, a magazine. You'll make a living somehow, and you'll learn more by writing for the next 4 years than if you went and took a graduate course. And he had been a newspaper man all his life. I mean, he wound up being a teacher of us, this distinguished Ferris Professor of journalism. And he said, "Don't go to grad school." He said, "You're going to come out in debt that you'll never get out of, and and you won't know as much as you will." So here I am. I just started writing for all kinds of stuff. I started writing uh, like I mentioned Richard Halliburton was my first hero. Okay,
Yeah.
so um, so I go out on the trail of summer after I graduate. I go to places he went. I went to this well of death in Mexico, and I jumped in this 80-foot well of death, and I climbed Mount Popocatépetl. I was on his trail and going to places he went, and I write this article about him. And they publish it in the Princeton Alumni Weekly, like this adventurous young guy running to be that. And one of my friends at Princeton had said, you know, "You're a good writer," or maybe the professor, somebody had said to me, "You ought to talk to so and so. He's a good agent. He represents all these big people. He'll never represent you, but he might give you advice, and you can tell him I recommend you talk to him on how you find an agent. He'll find you some lower level guy." So so I'm living like in poverty in a rooming house with everyone shares one telephone in the hall because we can't afford our own phones. And you know, it's like a pay phone in the hall,
Yeah.
and we have a hot plate in our room and stuff like that. And somebody calls and says, "There's a call for you." And this editor in New York has read my article on Richard Halliburton about me being on the trail and jumping the well of death, and he's a hero, and I want to know more about him. And she calls me up and she says, "I represent so and so, and we'd like you to write a book for us, expand that article into a book, and we'll publish it." And I'm like, I don't even know she's a crank call, and I'm like,
Oh.
I don't tell her I'm in a rooming house. I've got no money. I say, "Look, listen, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you back sometime or something? We'll talk or something." And she says, "Do you have an agent?" And I said, "No, I don't have an agent." I said, "I was thinking about talking to so and so, and I mentioned this prominent agent." I said, "But he's not my agent. I've never reached out to that man, never contacted him. He's the only name of an agent I know that people had said, you know, talk to him someday, right?" So she says, "Well, I won't call him." And I said, "Why should you call him? I just said he's not my agent. Why would you call him?" 10 minutes later, I get a call from that agent. He's one of the top agents in New York, one of the most highly respected, high-powered agent. He said, "So and so from so and so press called me up, and she said, I'm interested in CHIP DEFFAA's book. Are you his agent?" And he said, and I told her, "Yes, and there's a lot of interest in CHIP DEFFAA." He says there's a bidding war going on for his book. I had not written a page of a book. I had no concept of a book. He says, "I told her there's a bidding war going on for you." And I go in to meet him in New York. He calls me in to meet him. And he's got this office bigger than Mussolini's. And he's sitting there like you have to walk like 20 feet to come to his desk.
Oh, yeah.
And he's sitting there at the desk having his personal barber give him a haircut because he doesn't have time to go out to a barbershop while he's talking to me. And he's saying, and he's dropping names of all these famous people he represents. And he says, "You want to meet him? You'd like him." And like, you know, I'm like, where do I pay the money for the next month's phone bill? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
right.
and he's like, "I told her you're my agent. You're my agent." He says, and he gets me in advance to
Right.
write a book
To
for
live on.
Bob's Merrill Publishing Company. And before I can get the book done, Bob's Merrill goes out of business. And in the meantime, he's like, "Don't worry." He says, "You'll write other books. There'll be other things. Maybe I can find another publisher for that book." But in the meantime, I was moving on and doing other. So the next thing I know, so I've never been without an agent since I was like right out of college. And I've had great agents, and they saved me from being stupid because I'm not a business guy. I have not a clue on business. But when he said, "Yes, I represent CHIP DEFFAA, and there's a lot of interest in him," and there's a bidding war going.
Brilliant.
And this is how deals get made in New York. And so she was like putting in her bid in the bidding war against, hoping that she was bidding enough to get the Chip DeFaA book. And I had to write an outline. So I never wrote an outline in my life. All through high school, we had to write outlines before and turn in an outline before paper. I didn't know how to write an outline. So what I would do is I would write the paper first and then construct an outline that would match it, hand in the outline, then say that's what the paper is going to be written to, because I didn't really work that way. So I would always fake that outline. And I said, but I don't know what's going to be in the book. He said, just write any outline. I got to show them an outline, and they've got your article, and like you've outlined the whole book. So I gave them an outline, and he said he could have sold it without an outline, but he says I got to show them what we're sending out to people in the bidding war. So there was my outline. I laugh. I laugh. I have wonderful agents. I don't know how they do it, but New York runs on agents more than you'd think. And like I had this, he's still my agent. My gosh, Peter Sawyer is my agent. He's the head of the Fifi Oscar agency. And one time I was into his office, maybe, I don't know, I can't remember. It was 10 years. It doesn't matter. And I say, and he had turned down some offers. I'd come in to get the plays published of George M. Cohan and Night and one of the other ones, One Night with Fanny Brice. And I swear, he says, Chip, those need to be published. So he gets on the phone. He calls up some publisher. I watched it happen right there. And he got me the play publishing contract for George M. Cohan and Night, stage rights, and one of the other ones on that phone call, and a little advance, and he gets his cut, his 10% or whatever. But he did it on a phone call. They had not seen the play. They had not heard anything from the play. They took his word enough because he was a respected agent and they dealt with him in the past. He said, look, he says, and if you can't get a production someplace of Chip DeFaA's George M. Cohan and Night on 4th of July, someplace, he says, it's a good play. Take my word for it. You'll be glad. And they took this one, and maybe they took one on Irving Berlin. I don't remember. But I watched that happen on that phone call. If I had not dropped in that office that day, whereas he stopped me because I had found this other publishing company.
Yeah.
And I found them on my own, and they had sent me contracts for the Cohan play and something else. And he says, Chip, have you read these contracts? And I said, I have, and I'm a pretty smart guy. He says, well, he's my agent's like an agent, and he's a lawyer too. He says, listen to what it says. Listen to what this says. They have bought all rights to your work. They will make a decision on how to bill you, if at all. Means they will now own this play. They don't have to put your name on according to the contract, and he says, so what they're doing is if you sign this, you're saying, yes, you can steal all my work, own it forever, and it's up to you whether you want to give me any credit for it. And I couldn't believe that such a contract could even exist.
What company was this? We've got to know. Who are the Ganefs?
These ones, I said, do you want to negotiate a better contract? He says, Chip, you don't talk to people like that. You don't negotiate with them, because if they would offer a contract so outside the bounds, so outside the norms, the parameters, he says it wouldn't matter what they sign, because they're not obviously in it to do it legitimately. And I forget the name of that company, but he saved me, because I would have been thrilled to have, like, they want to publish me. I didn't even see that thing that at their discretion will be how the author's credited or billed. He said at their discretion means they don't have to bill you at all. They don't have to credit you at all. And they will own all rights. Whereas I own all the rights to my scripts. They license it, meaning so you want to do a play for a month, you pay royalties to put it on for a month, but I still own the underlying property. And when we made the movie of George M. Cohan and Night, it's basically my script, and John Peterson, who I wrote it for, he made changes with my approval, but we didn't have to get, you didn't
have to ask the permission of the play publishers. Your thing.
Right.
You can do what you want to do with it.
Right.
Speaking of,
yes, sir. Go
Let,
ahead.
let me also ask, Chip DeFa, since you've also, as you did, you produced George M. Cohan Tonight off Broadway, you produced a Fanny Bright show. Is producing now different than it was, say, back in 2008 or back in 1998? I mean, what are the challenges that you go through to put on a show or even put out a
Okay.
CD that
Um,
weren't there, or what are the same ones too?
uh, yes, things are more challenging. And I just want to be clear.
Oh,
When we were first trying out the George M. Cohan show and its various iterations, I was the sole producer. But eventually we got an offer to produce it from the York Theater. And then we got an offer, better yet, from the Irish Repertory Theater. So they were the producers, but they're licensing it. They don't own it. They're saying you will get this much royalties per performance. You'll get some money up front, and they pay me also a fee to be a director. But they produced it so that it was there. And they were most amazing people to work for. I've also had worked with totally dishonest producers that are I won't mention their names, but it is unbelievable what the dishonest ones will do. So the
oh,
ones who
come
are
on,
good,
mention it. You can mention them. If they're bad, let's hear it. Who sucks? Come on.
let me tell you one guy and his wife, and God bless him, he's dead now. So maybe,
Oh yeah, who was he?
but no. I got to tell you how crooked he was. Um, he did a show. He had us do a show in at this point, George and Cohan had run off Broadway. Now different people want us to do productions any place, wherever. Somebody would say, come up and do it in Vermont, do it in New Orleans, wherever. And at that point, we would do it anywhere. I would. So we were supposed to do this production for him in New Jersey, and um, he shorted us on the money he promised. Okay. And then he said, he had to like rub it in a little bit. He had to say, he says, don't take it personally. I do this to everybody. He says, I have never paid anybody what I've promised because it's such a small amount. Who's going to make a fuss over it? And then what was most amazing was, uh, uh, and when I called my agent after the fact, he said, Chip, um, he was supposed to give you this certain payment before there was a performance. The agent said you should have called me because I would have told you you don't perform. It's not enough for the promise, because he gave some lame excuse like the bank was closed, but you'll get the money tomorrow. You know what I mean? And then he's getting ready, setting me up. But I was so naive, I didn't realize setting me up to cheat me out of the money. So then um, he says, and we were so angry at him. John Peterson cursed him out with every curse word, words I've never heard. John is a polite guy, but he came up with every on the phone, like a stream of calling him every name he could imagine, because he was a cheat. And then the guy says, he listens to all this tale, and he says, listen, I got another booking for you. I want to present your show on such and such. I said, are you crazy? We're not going to work for you ever again. You're a crook. And he says, and when we complained to Actors Equity, they said he's already on our list of crooked producers, which I didn't even realize existed. That if people ask about him, we would tell them this guy's a cheat. Don't work for him. So he said, but we said we're not going to do that show for you. He says you have to. I'm already advertising and selling the tickets for it, which he was. And he had a practice of doing that all the time, selling tickets, which gave him the money to put on things, and he didn't have it. And we said, but we're not giving you permission to put it on. And he's already advertising CHIP DEFFAA's George and Cohan Tonight. He says, what are you going to do? Sue me? It'll cost you more money to sue me than you get. And he was right about that. Now, once my father, God bless him, he once was faced with a guy like that who told him those words, it'll cost you more to sue me than you'll ever collect. And my father sued him anyway, even though at a loss, just to, do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I didn't even have the money to do that. And the guy, this is how much of a crook he was. He was already selling the tickets to George and Cohan Tonight. He goes out and he finds somebody else,
Oh,
not John Peterson, to just go out and do a night of George M. Cohan songs. And people who saw that sucky presentation of some mediocre guy doing mediocre renditions with a pianist of a dozen Cohan songs that he could find anywhere, and they thought they were seeing George M. Cohan Tonight. And But I had another producer. He was negotiating with my agent about he was going to do my show up in upstate New York. And my agent, rather, my agent was negotiating with him, and it didn't look like anything was going to work out. And the guy didn't want to sign the contract and all that. And my agent was on top of things, like I wouldn't be. He was doing Google searches on the guy and that, and he saw the guy was actually putting on my show. I had sent him the perusal script to see whether he wanted to produce it, and he thought somehow that it was running as he saw. He thought we'd never find out because it's upstate New York, and he would just collect the money. And my agent, straightened him out, and we got the money. But it's not even about the money. It's about you don't believe people dishonest exist, and Dave. I mean, Rabbi, I should have written a play about this guy, because the letters we got from the time he spent making up lies to explain it all, he was saying, you didn't get the contract, and the money I gave you, I sent you the money to bind the contract. He says, let me check into it. He says, listen. He says, I didn't realize this is what happened, but the person I gave the money to and the contract to mail it to you, on his way to the post office, he got hit by a hit-and-run driver, and he never got to mail it. He says, but as soon as I can, when I get that money back from him, I will have my wife personally mail it to you. When the money doesn't show up in the contract, which of course we knew it was all bull. Then I get the letter from the wife saying, it's my fault, not his. I'm the one who forgot when he gave me the package with the money and the contract to mail to you. Don't be angry at him. It's my fault, an honest mistake. And it went on and on and on and on. Eventually we got the money, but I told my agent, I said, there's a better play in this than
So let me ask, before we have to let you go, Chip Deffa, you're working seemingly on like 5 projects at once. So what are the 5 projects you're working on, let's say, for the rest of this year? What can we expect from you beyond the things that you've already put out?
There's always something. When I get off this
conversation,
I have to get in touch with an actor in Sweden who's contributing to a George M. Cohan album I'm working on. So there's another album. It's going to be called George M. Cohan's Broadway. We hope to get that out by the end of this year, or maybe it'll be early next year, depending on. It's not quite done yet, but we record it as we can and as the people are available. That's one thing. I have this album of my own with my dear guest friends from Jerry Bavino and all these wonderful people. Beth Bartley singing with me and stuff like that. That's going to be CHIP DEFFAA down in Honky Tonk Town, and in a couple of months that will be out. So there's other things I'm working. I shouldn't even mention it because I'm superstitious about mentioning things. I'm working with a fellow. We're developing a show on Al Jolson, and we hope to have the concept album out. It's the songs have been recorded with like a studio cast of 15, and we have to now record some little voiceovers, intros to set up some of the songs. So we're almost done with that recording. That hopefully will be out by the end of this year. And then once you've got that album out, you see where we can put it on. And I'm not sure where we'll start. I was very blessed that for many years, the 13th Street Repertory Theater, this wonderful woman who ran it, Edith O'Hara, she was 100 years old, but for like many years, she told me, Chip, she liked me. You have carte blanche. Anything you want to try out here, you want to do a rehearsal here, an audition here, present anything, you don't need my permission. Just do it. We'll split whatever comes in the box office. And so I had a place to try anything and to produce. So that that's sort of, when you ask how things have changed or easier, nothing could have been easier for me to try something out. And now it'll be like, we got to see where we can do things, and and we'll see. It's all, there's a lot of things. I'm probably forgetting things. And then
well, what are you writing? Are you writing anything for theater scene? Are you still reviewing shows? Are you writing plays, stories?
Yeah. But then we get into a sacred territory that I have the superstition that if I talk about a script or play that's in the process, it'll never happen. So then I have to say, like, it's okay for me somehow in my head to talk about that album of Chip DeFa's Down Honky Tonk Town because it's actually being manufactured right now. So I figure like it's not out yet, but it's almost done. And knock
Right.
wood, I'm not jinxing it. I hope, even though tomorrow I may get this call from saying that the guy who was delivering the things got hit by a hit and run driver, and he's up in upstate New York with the other one recuperating. Um, but I like to keep some of that in to like keep the it's like the if you don't take the lid off the tea kettle, if the tea kettle won't boil if you take the lid off, so you don't want to let the steam off too early. You want to.
I get that. I
Good.
absolutely
Yeah.
get that.
It's
So,
such a joy. You made this such a fun day. I cannot tell you, and I'm so grateful. And you get to see the first person ever see this new shirt. I said I will premiere this on the show. So
it's a beautiful shirt. You're a
thank you.
beautiful person, an
Thank you.
incredibly hardworking person, a talented person too.
You're very
So
generous.
remind people before we let you go, you have a website. Is it chipdeffaa.com?
Yes, with multiple F's and A's. DEFFAA.com.
Can I ask you what familiarly defies what background are you? Not Jewish.
That name comes from Alsace-Lorraine, which, depending on who won what war, was once part of Germany, once part of France. But once the New York Post left an A off my name, and they wrote a Chip DeFaa with only one A at the end, and I gave my editor Vinny Mazzetto,
Oh yeah.
holy hell, he was a wonderful guy. And I said, I've been writing for you for over 10 years. How could you not know how to spell Chip DeFaa? How could you leave an A off my name? And it was probably me because they print what I would type in. I probably was the one who left it off. I said, how could you possibly write Chip DeFaa, DEFFA, and you owe me an A. The next day in the Post, he ran my story, my byline ran DEFFAAA. He ran 3 A's to make up the one he cheated me out of the day. So I have no complaints with the Post.
That's beautiful. I love it. I love it.
Thanks.
Chip DeFaa, I wish you many, many more years, so many more CDs, so many more productions. Best of luck with especially with the Al Jolson thing.
Thank
Please, please stay in touch with the neighborhood
Please.
and shalom to you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye bye now.
Bye.